All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, I can't lie to you. It's been a very bittersweet NBA playoffs in 2021. We've seen some of the best games and some of the best series that we've had in a while, especially due to the lack of a particular player who likes to make it all about himself. But I also have to say some of the injuries have cost us the potentiality for what I believe probably would have been the best finals maybe since, who knows, Cleveland and Golden State in 2016 or the Lakers versus Boston in 2010. That being the LA Clippers versus the Brooklyn Nets. I do believe that had their proverbial stars and superstar not went down, we would have seen an LA Clippers versus Brooklyn Nets finals, and I think that it would have been a finals for the ages. And we would have finally gotten a question answered of who is the new heir apparent in the NBA. Who is the new best player in the league? Is it KD or is it Kawhi? Because they've both been battling with LeBron as well as Steph Curry for the title of the best player in the NBA for the past 5 years or so right now. And some people say KD, some people say Kawhi. You know, a few less people say Kawhi. Of course, LeBron has his acolytes, his adherents. And then you have those who say Stephen Curry because of his massive impact. But unfortunately, Kawhi Leonard has gone down and supposedly he's going to be out for the remainder of the playoffs. There's been no official announcement, so maybe there's some chicanery afoot. I'm hoping. As I'm making this video right now, the Clippers are down 2-0 to the Phoenix Suns, who appear to be a team of destiny. That's how they're playing. That's what their belief seems to be like, that they're a team of destiny. And a lot of times, in that magic carpet ride for a team of destiny, everything seems to go their way. Because I have no doubt that had Kawhi Leonard not gone down in Game 4 against the Utah Jazz, the Clippers would have no problem dispatching the Phoenix Suns, because the Phoenix Suns are a great story. They're a great young team led by one of the all-time great pure point guards in Chris Paul, but they would have been no match for an LA Clippers team with Kawhi Leonard. And I have a formula that I'm sure most of you brothers are aware of. It's a formula that many people have used for years to determine who's going to win in the NBA playoffs between two teams. Normally, if you line up the top 5 best players on both teams, like if you take the best players from one team and the best players from the other team and you were to rank them, by the time you get to 5, whichever of the two teams has the majority of the top 5 players is normally going to be the team that wins in that series, barring injury or some type of inept coaching. So I'm not surprised that the Clippers were able to defeat the Mavericks, because they did have the best player in the series by a smidgen in Kawhi Leonard over Luka Doncic. And the third best player in the series was Paul George. And even after that, the fourth best player in the series was Reggie Jackson. So they were supposed to win that series. It just took them a while to make the appropriate adjustments. In the second round against Utah, same thing. Best player was Kawhi Leonard. Second best player, Donovan Mitchell. Third best player, Paul George. Fourth best player, Reggie Jackson. So the Clippers were supposed to win that series. Now, in this series against the Phoenix Suns, this is different. With no Kawhi Leonard, and of course there being an argument over who's better, Paul George or Devin Booker. Just off top, the best player in the series appears to be on the other team. So the Clippers are in trouble. This is a different series for them. Can they win this series without Kawhi? We'll find out. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Two big stories broke this morning. Chris Paul is out indefinitely after entering COVID health and safety protocols. And
now, when I saw this injury happen at first, I said to myself, this looks like a little stinger. You know, maybe he jammed his knee or something like that. But Kawhi Leonard is someone that, even though on the outside, on the exterior, his physique looks something along the lines of a LeBron James, his body breaks down way easier than LeBron's body breaks down. You know, we call Kawhi the Terminator, but it's relatively easy to terminate him if he lands in the wrong way, if his body mechanics are not, calibrated appropriately. And he's not someone with the best biomechanics. When you see him move, when he jumps, how he lands, he tends to be relatively awkward. Just like with Joel Embiid, I've stated, I think that some of these players, they would be investing their money wisely to hire an Olympic track and field coach who can teach them how to run, how to jump, how to land, things like that, to help them avoid some of these injuries that they seem to get due to how they misplace their feet, how they misplace their knees, how their hips don't seem to be properly aligned when they land, things like that, to maybe help them avoid a lot of the problems that befall them, especially in pivotal moments.
His potential opponent in the Western Conference Finals, Kawhi Leonard, is expected to miss tonight's.
Because see, what happened right there with Joe Engel, that's not supposed to happen. But it occurred because Kawhi Leonard likes to dribble upright. I mentioned this in another video. If you watch Michael Jordan in his career, especially when he was younger, when he would penetrate to the basket, he would almost penetrate with his body like a greyhound, like the upper part of his body above the waist. He would lean it forward, and he'd be moving almost like a missile. It would be very difficult to push him off of his trajectory because of how his body was situated. He never dribbled upright when he was trying to penetrate to the basket. And that's why it was very difficult to strip the basketball from him. It was also very difficult to knock him off of his course. Joe Engel was able to knock Kawhi off of his course and also buckle his knee because Kawhi was dribbling upright.
5 with the knee injury he suffered late in Game 4. Leonard missed the final few minutes of the Clippers' blowout win and apparently told teammates yesterday to expect him to miss tonight's game. His status for the rest of the series right now remains in doubt. So, Shannon, who wins tonight, Clippers or Jazz?
Well, Skip, prior to me having knowledge of this, I took the Jazz because I think the Jazz are a very, very tough team at home.
On top of that, Skip Bayless, I'm very bitter about what happened to LeBron. And I would hate to see the Clippers win a championship. I don't want to hear your mouth or nobody else's mouth, and I just don't want to hear LeBron crying at home.
That's 36 home games, Skip. With Spider Mitchell playing, they're 35-1. They're very formidable. They're the best home team in basketball. They had the best record in basketball.
Now, as we know, the Utah Jazz will go on to lose Game 5, and they had a great season, but they have a major problem, that problem being their personnel. They run a very janky type offense. Their offense is, it's almost like a hustle. The reason why they take so many threes is because they have to maximize their offensive possessions due to the fact that their coach knows that they cannot match up with most of the better teams in the NBA player for player. They have one superstar level talent in Donovan Mitchell. The rest of their players, for the most part, are long-range bombers who would be considered journeymen. Joe Engel and Bogdanovich and O'Neal and these guys, they try hard. No, they have a bunch of 6'6" to 6'8" dudes who all do the same thing. They don't have someone other than Mitchell who they could put it in his hands and say, okay, make a play. So they have to set everything up to be drive and kick in an attempt to maximize their offensive possessions. Well, when you go against another team who plays in a similar way, like the Clippers, except has far more individual talent, and has multiple players so you can give them the basketball and say make a play, you're not going to win the series. And you can see over the course of each game how the Clippers just started to wear them down. I mean, the first 2 games, it looked like the Clippers were playing at about 75%, 80% of their max. And both of those games could have went either way. So once they ratcheted it all the way up to 10, it made sense that, they were blowing out the Jazz. And even when Kawhi went down, I said, I think that the Clippers are still going to win this series because if you look at how their intensity has risen as each game has gone along, even when you subtract Kawhi, what that basically means is that for the rest of the series, those games should come down relatively to the wire, but the Clippers have better players. They should still win the series.
Loudest crowd around.
They definitely do now because they get 18,000, 19,000 people in that building. So even before having this knowledge about Kawhi potentially being out, I was taking the Jazz. But Jazz don't underestimate this team. Because a lot of mistakes teams make, Skip, is that they think because the best player is out, oh, we got this, this is going to be a breeze. This is going to be anything but a breeze. I remember, knowing Ty Lue, Skip, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2014, LeBron didn't play against Portland. And Portland probably underestimated, and Kyrie came out and dropped 55. So Ty Lue is going to have these guys ready to play. And they want to show that they're more than a one-man team.
Ty Lue has proven himself to be one of the best coaches in the NBA, if not the best coach in the NBA, with his strategy and with his level of adjustments.
And we are some of all of our parts. Yes, Kawhi's their best player. There's no disputing that.
And let me also say this. Here's what we know about LeBron James. He's had Eric Spoelstra, who's proven to be one of the best coaches in the NBA. He's had Ty Lue, who's gone on to prove himself as being one of the best, if not the best, current head coach in the NBA. So when are we going to start to reassess his career and give more credit to those who are calling the shots, as opposed to LeBron James, who gets all the credit for the coaching and supposedly is the one who made this guy and made that guy.
Will be ready to play, and the Jazz need to be on their best behavior, or they'll get caught slipping. Now, I hate this. I hate it. Yeah. I hate that we have so many think about, Skip, how many all-stars that we've had missed time in the playoffs.
Right, but you're repeating an argument that has been levied by your workplace husband, LeBron James. At the end of the day, injuries are a part of pro sports. These have still been some of the best NBA playoffs that I can remember in a while. Is it unfortunate? Absolutely. But to me, it's more unfortunate because I'm not going to get to see my dream matchup, that being the Clippers versus the Brooklyn Nets, hopefully next season. But I like both teams a lot. It would have definitely been bittersweet, whoever would have won. Because I like to see the legacies grow, particularly for players like Kawhi and KD, who are not media favorites.
In the stat where it says it's the most in NBA history, 7 All-Stars. Now, if Kawhi missed, that's going to be 8.
Yep.
Chris Paul, we can talk about him a little bit, Skip. If he misses a game, that'll be 9. That's not what the NBA wanted.
By the way.
Right, but once again, this is an anomaly of a season, or at least it's a season that is coming off of an anomaly of a year. So there are no other years where someone will be held out for COVID, COVID protocols. In regards to the things that have happened to Kawhi and Kyrie, a lot of those injuries were contact-based.
It's the game last night, effectively.
Yes.
I didn't know why he was out there. Seriously. Go ahead.
He did, Skip. He did 46 minutes. I honestly could have did what James Harden did last night.
Seriously, you could have.
At the ripe age of almost 53, I could have did what James Harden did.
Yeah.
We'll give James credit for hobbling out there. I'll say this about James. He embarrassed Mike Conley because I don't think that Mike Conley thought that he was ready to participate in Game 6. But the fact that James Harden went out there with what was obviously a compromised right hamstring kind of embarrassed Mike Conley back into the lineup. Because I don't think that he would have tried to play in Game 6 had it not been for James Harden, hop along Cassidying his way out there in Games 5, 6, and 7 for the Brooklyn Nets.
This is tough. And it didn't look right. Skip, I just thought he banged his knee. I think we've all, been running hard and jammed that knee and it hyperextend.
It did.
But something happened. Kawhi took himself out.
He did.
And the game was still in doubt. It wasn't like, Skip, it was a 20-point lead.
Completely
It was
agree.
right there. Utah make another 3 here or there. And we really got a ball game.
4.5 minutes left. Yep.
Man, Kawhi got that. Kawhi met somebody with that towel and went side it down. And it's really hard to tell, Skip, because his emotions never change. Because he's on the sideline, he's not laughing, he's not high-fiving, kiki-keying, anything like that. So his head is down, and he was like, and I'm thinking of like, okay, is he really hurt? Because you hear him talking about the game, I'm fine. But he always says he's fine. Even when he isn't fine, he's fine. So Skip, this is huge for the Clippers, and I know this is terrible. And you don't want to see any team, but what we're starting to see, Skip, whoever win the title is going to be the team that was the healthiest throughout.
Well, how is that different from any other season, Shannon Sharp? Or is it just another way for you to project your excuse-making energy from your man LeBron James, where you're trying to imply that this season should have an asterisk placed on it because so many of the players have gone down due to injury, supposedly because of the compacted schedule? You know how many seasons the championship has been determined because one team got injured at the wrong time? I mean, give me a break.
And standing.
That's what it is, a war of attrition.
Agreed.
Because we've seen it affect. It started out with the Lakers. We thought it was going to hurt the Suns with CP3 in his shoulder.
Yeah.
The Lakers did not lose that series to the Suns because of injuries. They lost because the Suns were the better team. People love talking about how the series was tied at 2 when Anthony Davis was healthy. No, sir. The series was tied at 2 because CP3 was out there throwing 2 games in the series. And when Monty Williams caught wind of what he was doing, he was going to sit CP3 for Game 4, and CP3 realized that he was going to have to play his real game, or at least a semblance of his real game, so that he could throw Monty Williams off the track. That's when they won Game 4. And then Game 5, Phoenix is blowing the Lakers out, and CP3 seems to strangely suffer another shoulder injury. Notice when they go to the next round against the Denver Nuggets, that severe shoulder injury is magically, mystically healed. And he's out there playing like, the best basketball he's ever played in his life. So that's how you know that CP3 is really a plant in the NBA. He just happens to be a great basketball player. But there are a lot of plants in the NBA.
Neff, and you see Joel Embiid now, Skip. So, and now Kawhi. Man, I feel bad for the Clippers. I feel bad for Kawhi because he was playing unbelievable.
This was the best I've ever seen Kawhi play. Even better than that legendary 2019 playoff run. The game that he had in Game 6 against the Mavericks is probably one of the top 5 playoff performances I've ever seen in an elimination game, if not higher than that. It was right there on par with LeBron's performance in Game 6 against the Celtics in 2012. That's how unbelievable he was.
Prior to hearing this news, I was going to pick the Clippers to win Game 6 because, as I told several of my friends yesterday, they better win Game 6.
Right.
Because I don't think
Game 5.
I'm sorry, Game 5. Yes. Game 5 is the crucial one at Utah because I don't think they can win a Game 7 in that insane asylum at Utah.
Now, as you brothers out there know who watched the game, the Clippers would go on to win Game 5, and Paul George would have a legendary performance as well, an almost historically great performance, which shocked me because I was watching the game, but I wasn't watching it, and it seemed like every time I had the game on, Paul George was flopping all across the floor like a damn fish out of water. Like he has one of the most unappealing styles of play of any super talented player that I've ever seen. Like Paul George's talent level. And I always say this, and certain people might not like this, but as an overall player, his offensive game was greater than Scottie Pippen's, or is greater than Scottie Pippen's. Is he the defensive player that Scottie is? Not quite, but the rules are different today. Now, where Scottie really has him is in his psychological approach. By the early 90s, Scottie had become a dog because he played with Michael Jordan and he'd gone up against the Pistons and the Knicks. So that was just the mentality that you had to have in that era. I'm not quite sure that I would ever call Paul George a dog, but he's tougher than people give him credit for. But as an overall talent, he's above Scottie Pippen. As an offensive player, he's a better offensive player than Scottie Pippen was, but he's very frustrating to watch because he's always looking for the referees to bail him out.
One to win is tonight because they've got the momentum. They've got Utah a little bit on their heels thinking maybe we're just not as good as they are. And if you...
Well, that was exactly the case. And I believe that they were broken in Game 5. But Donovan Mitchell came out in Game 6 because he's a superstar talent with a superstar mentality. He's not a superstar yet, but he has that approach and that mentality. They were able to get broken. The Clippers broke them in Game 5. But Donovan came out in Game 6 with that dog mentality, and he kind of restored a level of hope within them until the Clippers just came at them in waves, especially in that third quarter with that kid Terrence Mann.
Carry that momentum into tonight at Utah and maybe hit them in the mouth the way you hit them in the mouth in Game 4 and knock the crowd out of the game a little bit and just somehow hold them off. Then if you could win that Game 5 and come home and close them in Game 6, that's the way to get to the conference finals.
Correct.
And it's good news, bad news, it's bittersweet because at first I heard that Chris Paul was in COVID protocol. And I'm thinking, wow, the heavens just opened up in the West. And it's like the Clippers' turn.
Yes.
Now, is CP3 really in any type of COVID protocol, or is this just another ritual that's being enacted? Anything involving him, I don't trust in any way, shape, or form. Notice he tried to throw the first LA series, and then the second LA series comes along, and suddenly he's in COVID protocol. So maybe, the league office, Adam Silver, that chief Kabbalist himself told CP3, look, according to the number, we can't have the Phoenix Suns in the NBA Finals. We need to have at least one big market team in the NBA Finals because we're not quite sure who's going to come out of the East now that Philadelphia and the Brooklyn Nets are out of it. It's either going to be Atlanta or Milwaukee. We need a big market team coming out of the West. Can you help us out, Chris? Wouldn't shock me at all if something like that went down. And once again, when I say by the numbers, I'm not just talking about financially. I'm also talking about according to, what a lot of brothers call the gematria, or the Kabbalistic aspect of it. Just very strange to me. This guy, Chris Paul, he tries to throw the first LA series, and now suddenly, he has a COVID protocol issue for the second LA series.
Thinking, wow, yesterday, Kawhi Leonard made first team All-NBA, one slot ahead of your man LeBron James. And that was significant for the Clippers as a franchise, that the team in the basement got a first team All-NBAer, and they're still afloat in the playoffs. And your guys are watching from home. LeBron is tweeting about Kevin Durant. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, let me say this. Kawhi Leonard has been playing on the same level as LeBron James for 5 years now. He's been playing on LeBron James' level at the very least since the 2016-2017 season. Maybe from the season before that, in 2015-2016. He's been playing on the same level as LeBron James. And his teams have been just as successful in the regular season and even into the playoffs. I mean, it's just facts. So this notion that it was a huge upset that Kawhi was first team All-NBA and the only reason why it happened is because LeBron went down, that's more media narrative. Now, I have little doubt that LeBron would have been first team All-NBA had he not been hurt, but it's more because of his reputation than anything else. Because Kawhi's been just as good as LeBron on offense for 6 years, and he's been better than him on defense for almost the last 7-8 years.
On is watching the playoffs from a second team vantage point All-NBA. Right. And that's debatable. And again, if LeBron had stayed healthy the whole year, I doubt it would have stayed that way. Right. But
once again, all a hater is a fan turned inside out. That's all it is. Skip Bayless has this huge masquerade going on about him being a LeBron James hater. He's really a fan of LeBron's. That's what he is. He's infatuated with LeBron James. And I promise you that once LeBron retires, you'll hear Skip Bayless, he'll be approaching LeBron with far more reverence than he does right now, which is very commonplace in the media. Once athletes retire, they're only supposed to be remembered according to their highlight clips.
Does anybody have a problem with him being first team? Nobody has a problem.
No.
So all of a sudden, everything was coming up roses in Southern California for the Clippers until he did it to me again. This is the guy I have wrestled with for years because I told you he was, for years, my favorite player for the Spurs. They're my favorite team all time. It's sometimes hard to watch them these days, but in those days, it was obviously Manu. I love Manu and Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. But the guy who he captured my heart and ultimately my soul was Kawhi Leonard because they stole.
How are you going to be someone who claims to believe in God, but sit on TV talking about how another man captured your soul? Like, come on, man.
I traded George Hill for him, and they also got Davis Bertans back in the trade. So they got Kawhi and Bertans, and we see what Bertans can do for Washington. He's pretty great, right? He's one of the better three-point shooters in the game. Fearless range. And they got both of them back for George Hill.
I don't think when they traded George Hill, Skip, because Kawhi was mainly a defensive guy, I don't think they ever thought he would be the offensive guy that he turned into.
San Diego.
I promise you, the San Antonio Spurs knew what they were getting back. Because I have very little doubt that Kawhi Leonard is Monarch programmed himself. There's a little sub-level of Harpocrates or quote-unquote God of Silence programming with Kawhi. And we know that the player that he was traded for, George Hill, is a programmed asset himself. I've gone over that in another series on my main channel, with him being involved in the quote-unquote Milwaukee Bucks walkout during the bubble, where they decided to not play that playoff game. So all of these things are constantly connected, and as I've stated in the past, Mr. Greg Popovich, obviously to me, is an MK handler. He has a CIA background.
Watched him in the NCAAs, and I couldn't see it because he defended. He didn't score like this. And to the Spurs' credit, they turned him into a scorer. And Chip England, their shot doctor, he worked on that, and they got that mid-range where he just holds it in that claw right there and just line drives it in from 15 feet, and it's pretty unstoppable. It's the next thing to KD in this league.
If you think about it, Skip, because
all of the elite level players who are able to lead their teams to championships have to have the mid-range. If you don't have the mid-range, you're not going to be able to lead your team to a championship. There's never been a team that has won a championship without a real mid-range threat. Even in this analytical era where you have these idiots who tell teams and coaches who tell teams you should only be taking threes and dunks and layups and free throws, there is yet to be a team that has really even seriously contended for a championship other than maybe the 2018 Rockets, who've been able to win without having the mid-range. Because what the mid-range jump shot does is it gets you out of situations where the defense is collapsing on you so hard that you can't get a three-point shot off or you can't get to the basket. You can throw it to a KD, you can throw it to a Kawhi Leonard. Back in the day, you could throw it to a Kobe, you could throw it to a Jordan and say, just make something happen for us, in the mid-range. And they can do it. And that's how you win championships. You don't win no damn championships by just jacking up threes.
It's basically fingertips. He has to put it because his hand is so big, he can't shoot it.
He shoots it on his fingertips.
Absolutely. And that's a great point by Shannon Sharp. It's amazing how great of a shooter Kawhi Leonard is with how big his hands are. Same thing with Jordan. And that's the reason why Giannis struggles so much. His hands are almost too big to be an efficient jump shooter. Unless he can find a coach who can really teach him the technique that he's going to need to improve his proficiency as a jump shooter, he's going to be shaky for his whole career. Giannis Antetokounmpo I'm talking about.
So the point is, they go as he goes.
He does.
And the reason I was going to pick them in Game 5 is because in the end it boils down to Kawhi is just a little better than Donovan. I love Donovan.
And that's all it boils down to. Once again, anyone who knows anything about basketball, especially playoff basketball, if you want to know who's going to win the series, 95 times out of 100 is going to come down to which team has 2 of the top 3 players or 3 of the top 5 players. And that's going to tell you all you need to know.
Closer to scores you get.
Yeah.
But Kawhi...
Now, every once in a while, you have teams where the best player on each team is relatively equal. Like in the mid to late 2000s when the Mavericks would play the Spurs or something like that, and you had Duncan against Nowitzki. Like, those 2 top players at that moment in their careers, they were relatively equal. So sometimes it could go the Spurs' way, other times it could go the Mavericks' way.
Consistently score because he can get to the mid-range and just keep doing that to you, or he can just go in and claw dunk you.
Right.
And Donovan doesn't do that.
Right.
So Donovan sort of lives and dies from distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he lives and dies from distance because he's had leg injuries. But Donovan, fully healthy, he can get to the cup and he can finish, because even though he's only listed at 6'1", the cat has like a 45-inch vertical. So he's really more like 6'7", 6'8", because he can jump over people and extend.
Does, but I really think Donovan has Steph's up and under game, all of his lane game.
But Donovan is not. He's trying to get all the way to the paint, or you're gonna shoot the 3. Yeah. Now he does have his mid range has gotten better, Skip. But like you said about Kawhi, you were thinking like, okay, could Kawhi possibly have a KD game on the road?
Sure,
he could. I mean, because we saw what he did in what was that Game 6 where he had 45. And then he followed that up with another outstanding performance.
So I told you yesterday, Paul George has grown up right before your very eyes. He's toughened up right before your very eyes. Is he good enough to go solo and win at Utah tonight? I don't think so.
He wins this game.
Well, Paul George would go on to prove Skip Bayless incorrect, and also myself, because I did not believe that Paul George would be able to have that type of game. I thought that the Clippers could still win those games, but I thought that it would have to be more of a collective. But thankfully, for the Clippers' sake, he was able to have that game. I think 37 points and 16 rebounds or something like that. Like, it amazed me when I saw that shit at the end of the game. When I saw the the stat sheet, because every time that I saw the game, I was flipping around. This nigga was flopping all across the floor. I'm like, what is this clown doing?
Now he would really be
playoff conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So at first I heard Chris Paul is in COVID protocol, and I'm thinking, I don't know what that means because nobody knows.
Right.
Did he get vaccinated? I have no idea.
Is he asymptomatic? Is he symptomatic?
I don't know. Is it just in close contact with? I was watching after the game the other night after they closed out. He's hugging everybody, you know, and you just don't know.
You go up in the stand, I think that was his parents, mom, his sister, or somebody.
And it's everybody. It's the whole clan is up there, and he's just hugging them down the road. Who knows what might have happened? We can only guess.
Correct.
But if this goes 7 games, here, Utah Clippers. Well, that would be Sunday, so the conference finals could start on Tuesday. But if somehow the Clippers could close them out, you could force the issue where it would start on Sunday, conference finals.
Right.
Well, if you did what I said that you needed to do, which is win tonight and win, what would be the next one? Tonight is Wednesday, Friday.
Right.
If you close them out on Friday night, you could force Phoenix maybe to play without Chris for a game or two. I don't know how long it's going to go.
Skip Bayless. Chris Paul was going to miss the first 2 games no matter what the Clippers did in their series against the Utah Jazz. That dude is living a scripted life.
What we don't know is, does he have COVID? Because if he has COVID, it could be, remember what happened to Schroeder?
Yeah.
Wasn't Schroeder like 2 weeks?
Forget Schroeder. Remember what happened to LeBron? LeBron was in an environment where, nobody knew really what was going on. Now the excuse is he didn't test positive for COVID, so that's why we didn't make him miss a game. But that's not supposed to be the reason why you make someone miss a game or not. I'm sure that they're going to, create some wiggle room, or people are going to say, well, there's a gray area there because ever since the majority of the athletes have gotten vaccinated, if you don't test positive for COVID, even if you're in an environment where you possibly could have contracted something, they allow you to play. But really, that's still LeBron James' sub-rule of the COVID protocol. They were never going to make LeBron James sit out, ever.
And then there was the issue with Schroeder in the playoffs against Phoenix. It seemed like
it affected him.
Yeah. Right?
Jason Tatum had, and Jason Tatum says his breathing still was
not the same.
Right.
Okay, so we don't know, but my point is the heavens opened for the Clippers, and then he did it again. So what do I know about Kawhi Leonard? He reminds me a little bit of Joel Embiid. He's a tough guy. He can play strong.
Right.
He can be fearless. He can be mentally tough in the clutch.
Right.
But when it comes to his body, he just listens to his body. If it squeaks, wherever it squeaks, he says, I'm out.
Right.
That's just...
I also think that Kawhi Leonard's one of those guys who probably could reap some benefits, once again, by either hiring an Olympic track and field coach who can teach him about biomechanics and his body more, or maybe, taking a ballet class or something like that, improving his flexibility, Pilates or what have you. He might do that already, who knows? But when I watch how he plays, how he lands sometimes, like there was a dunk that he had against Utah where I think that he got pushed in the back a little bit while he was in the air and he landed and he kind of jammed his left knee. Like, those type of things are always happening to him. So it tells me that he's a little bit too stiff.
Everybody can't play through injuries. Everybody can't play through pain. Now, we've seen guys be great, but the moment it's a toe or if anything, it plays on their psyche. They're like, man, I'm not myself. And they talk themselves out of just going out there and playing. And then next thing you know, the game's over. You're like, well, it bothered me a little bit towards the end of the game. But Skip, but if you look at Kawhi, Skip, he plays with a lot of torque. The way he has to stop, because you got to understand that he's not Kyrie. Kyrie's dancing is almost like Kyrie's on air.
I agree with that.
Well, Kyrie has great footwork, but Kyrie's another player who plays with a lot of torque. I would not underrate the level of torque and explosiveness that Kyrie plays with, even with how light his feet appear to be. Like, there's a reason why Kyrie plays with both of his knees wrapped up.
It's hard plants and back it up and put elevate.
It's sometimes awkward landings.
Yes.
His landings can be awkward on his blocks.
Right.
He comes down and I'm like, oh no, not again.
Because when he dunked one the other night, Rudy Gobert, that really should have been an and one because Rudy kind of shoved him in his back and it.
That's the dunk that I'm talking about. And as Skip Bayless already noted, Kawhi is very awkward when he lands. A lot of these guys, they need to be taught how to run and how to jump and how to land.
But he came down kind of awkward. But on that break, you can tell he started rubbing that. He's like, ooh.
So what was my first telltale sign that it was serious in his mind?
Right.
He goes to the free throw line and bricks 2 free throws.
Yeah.
He's a 90%er. And I said, he's got the demons in his head. Like, I can't.
Skip Bayless loves to sit on television and tell athletes how seriously or not seriously they're hurt. Now, of course, in the aftermath, Skip was forced to apologize to Kawhi because he received inside information that there was a partial tear to Kawhi's ACL. So whether or not Kawhi is going to be back, I don't know. I do believe that were this not to be the Western Conference Finals, Kawhi probably would have shut it down for the rest of the season and just got his operation. But I do think that he's probably trying to attempt some alternative form of healing to see if he can get back, if not for the remainder of the Western Conference Finals, at the very least for the finals, because Kawhi is a person who's trying to chase legacy. He wants to get to that third championship ring so that, maybe by the time he's around 32, 33 years old, he's won more championships than LeBron. He looks at LeBron as his rival, even though LeBron will never admit that Kawhi is his rival or one of his rivals. The only player that LeBron will even come close to acknowledging is a peer of his or on his level or a possible rival is KD. Even the media does not want to admit that KD is the rival of LeBron. And everything is so slanted by the media. Magic Johnson won 5 championships, Larry Bird won 3. But we're still told that they were equals. Well, LeBron James has won 4 championships and KD has won 2. But we're told that LeBron is by far the best player of his era. Why is that? We can also go into certain accolades that LeBron has received regular season wise over KD, but KD has won far more scoring titles than LeBron. Yes, LeBron has won more regular season MVPs, but one can make the case that KD maybe could have won another regular season MVP and that LeBron robbed Kobe Bryant of 2 regular season MVPs in the late 2000s. Who knows?
To his credit, he hung in for a little while and went back to the line and made 2 free throws, and I thought, maybe there's hope. But then he yanked himself. 4:30 left.
I know a guy that had something very similar. Jen, I think you remember it happened on a Saturday afternoon. A guy ran into his ankle. He laid down on the floor. He went back down. He came and made a 3. And Skip Bayless told me everything was okay. And lo and behold, the very thing that you said was very okay, your guy did it.
And you know what would have happened? If the next game had been a pivotal Game 5 of the playoffs, LeBron James would have sucked it up and played. And I know
it. No, he ain't playing, Skip.
He's an Iron Man. He's indestructible. He's the most durable superstar ever until this year.
No, Skip, if a guy misses 2 or 3 games, maybe if it's a playoff game, he comes back. A guy not missing 7 weeks and could have played the next day or the next 3 days. No, that...
I'm not quite sure about that. I think that LeBron James and Anthony Davis both had such an inflated opinion of themselves that they thought, this is our opportunity to rest up and get the break that we didn't get after the remainder of last season. And that's how you know that all this stuff that they're talking about injuries is balderdash. Because they both got to rest up. They both got to rehab. They both got to reflect. They thought that they'd be able to run through the Western Conference. I knew that they would not be able to. Multiple people I said, look, if LeBron is able in this postseason to get through Phoenix, Utah, and the Clippers and then beat the Brooklyn Nets in the finals, I will have no problem saying that the quote-unquote GOAT conversation is wide open, that he would be right there on par with Jordan. But I knew that he would not get past any one of those teams. The Lakers, even fully healthy, were not going to get past not even one of those teams in the Western Conference. The Dallas Mavericks would have gave them all that they could handle, all that they could ask for. But there was no way that they were going to beat Phoenix, Utah, and or the Clippers to get to the finals this year. No way. Because I know what LeBron is made of. He's someone who likes to, be out ahead of the competition. He doesn't like an equal playing field.
Was for all the marbles. What if this was it? He'd tough it out. He'd wrap it and shoot it and play on it.
I'll give you a prime example. Skip, you remember Isaac?
Well, we know that LeBron has no problem shooting all types of fluids up in him so that he could feel like he's the Incredible Hulk, allegedly.
He's there. He rolled the ankle.
I was there.
I said when he took his tape off, the ankle was this big.
Okay, he scored like 20 in the fourth quarter.
He did.
Isaiah Thomas basically had the same injury that Kyrie Irving had in Game 4 against the Milwaukee Bucks. But because of the stakes and also due to the fact that, Isaiah Thomas probably had a little bit higher pain threshold and ability to maneuver on the ankle than Kyrie Irving, he was able to gut it out in that Game 6. Well, who knows? Had the Brooklyn Nets been in the finals and it been that they were one game away from achieving their goal, Kyrie may have been able to do the same thing. Due to the fact that it was Game 4 against the Milwaukee Bucks, and the overall consensus was that the Brooklyn Nets were so far ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks. They didn't need James Harden, and they probably wouldn't even need Kyrie Irving. That's probably what led him in his subconscious mind to say, you know, I think that we'll be okay even without me.
He came back the next game.
It was at the Fabulous Four out here.
They ended up losing, but he came back the next game. Skip, he was a shell of, what did he have, like 3-4 points? And he was a shell of himself.
But on pure adrenaline?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, Skip. And you're like, whoo. But then all of a sudden that adrenaline starts to wane down. You're like, man, this thing really, really hurts.
So, to your point, I've said all year the Clippers are the deepest team. But
you ain't overcoming this.
Hey, stars win these games.
Yes,
this is it.
Yes.
This is the highest level of playoff basketball. And Phoenix looks a little vulnerable, and Utah's going to say, aha.
Right.
Oh, and the other little caveat here, Donovan Mitchell did not make first team, second team, or third team All-NBA.
Cost himself $33 million.
Well, Donovan Mitchell has been neglected for the type of player and the level that he plays at for a while now. I said this earlier in the regular season. Why is it that Donovan Mitchell has not been mentioned as a regular season MVP award-winning candidate? This is before he went down with the ankle injury. And, you know, the media, they guide the thoughts of the viewers so much when it comes to the NBA. They have you thinking that Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell, their names should not even have been mentioned. This should just be LeBron James. And then they came up and concocted this story about how Chris Paul deserved all these votes. But you're seeing right now how great the Phoenix Suns are without Chris Paul. Chris Paul is more of a steadying force and a steadying factor. But the way that their team plays is really based on the head coach, Monty Williams, as well as the up-and-coming greatness of their young shooting guard, Devin Booker, and a lot of the other great talent on their team. Now, what Chris Paul does is he allows Devin Booker to get that rest and not have to worry about distributing the basketball. That's what he does. But Chris Paul has never been the MVP of that team. Now, was he deserving of MVP consideration? Sure he was, because of the jump in wins. And it's difficult to really qualify and or quantify who had more impact. But just by watching how they've been playing since he was gone, and also being able to relatively ascertain how good they would have been this year even without Chris, based on them going 9-0 in the bubble, they probably would have had somewhere around the same amount of wins even without Chris, maybe about 7 or 8 fewer, which probably would have put them somewhere around the 5th seed as opposed to the 1 seed. But, you know, the Phoenix Suns, they just have a good team.
I don't think he might take it out on the visiting team.
Yeah, he and Jason Tatum. You get it the year before you did.
Get your Supermax.
Right, you get the Supermax. You get an extra $33 million.
Oh.
It just amazes me, though, you know, the guys who they decide to say are the MVP candidates as opposed to who isn't. Everything is so predicated on perspective and agenda. When LeBron James goes to Miami and he teams up with another superstar in D Wade, they give him 2 MVPs. When KD goes to Golden State and teams up with Steph, they say, well, you know, that basically nullifies Steph and KD from winning another MVP award because it's 2 superstars teaming up together. LeBron goes to Cleveland, teams up with Kyrie and Kevin Love, and, you know, they're constantly trying to act as if his name should be in the serious runnings for MVP, despite the numbers that Steph and KD and James Harden are putting up. Russell Westbrook, then he goes to LA and teams up with this guy Anthony Davis, and the media is trying to act like he should be the real MVP, even though Giannis is leading LeBron James in every metric on both offense and defense other than assists per game. His team is even more successful. So these are the reasons why people are always taking the media to task.
Get out tonight. I believe the Clippers are going to get blown out.
Let me ask you a question. Is Mike Conley playing? Because Utah's not feeling any sympathy. Because hold on, we played 4 games without Mike Conley.
They did?
I mean, I don't know, Skip. Have you ever seen the playoffs? You covered the game a lot longer than I've watched it. Have you ever seen a playoff where so many key guys were injured going into the playoffs or got injured in the playoffs?
No, and it's depressing because we all love it so much.
Yes.
And now it's only intrigued.
The only injuries that depressed me were the Kawhi and the Kyrie injuries and the James Harden injuries. That's it. Because I really wanted to see the Nets versus the Clippers in the finals.
Not there, right?
Because think about it, Skip. As you said, The NBA is really a superstar-driven league.
It is.
There ain't no team. No. You think Lakers, you think superstars. You think these teams, you think superstars. Well, the superstars aren't there.
So, I would like to congratulate you. In conclusion, the Clippers are history.
We already got the 2 cases, though.
Since I'm up like 65 cases,
I'm gonna get them back. Slowly but surely.
You saw me coming.
I can't believe it. And you thought about it, Skip. You kind of predicted this with Kawhi.
I told you he wouldn't play. Didn't I tell you that yesterday?
I honestly didn't.
Skip did say that, and it was a bit eerie when he said it how he said it the day before, because I looked at that, when he came up gimpy, I said, okay, he'll go get it iced down. He'll be back for the next game. And even in the post game, when he had the interview, he said, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm good. So I'm thinking, okay, he'll be back. And then Skip comes on TV the next day and says, oh, no, don't be surprised if Kawhi's out. And then that report comes down. I said, you got to be fucking kidding me.
New, but you were onto something there, and I got to give you that. Okay, so Katie.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. We'll see how things go for the LA Clippers for the remainder of the playoffs, as well as hopefully, if by some miracle, Kawhi Leonard is able to make a reappearance. So peace.